Thanks.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. So our presentation is related to COVID-19. As you can see, teaching assistants as out-of-field teachers. And as in many countries, we had a lockdown in Israel and all school closed. And in order to open the schools, the Ministry of Education was looking for a way to make this smaller groups because our classes are fairly large in Israel. It's about 30 students per class. And so what happened is that in the next day, in this school year that is now at the end of it, the Ministry of Education launched a new program, which we have never had in Israel, and recruited teaching assistants for primary schools so that large classes are split into capsules or bubbles, and that would allow face-to-face interaction and going back to school as normally as possible. And 6,000 teaching assistants started working this year all over Israel. And they were supposed to fill in the role of teachers, although none of them had any qualifications whatsoever. The recruitment process was done very quickly in the summer vacation. The Ministry of Education and the municipalities were the ones who advertised it, but the school principals were the ones that interviewed and chose the TAs for their schools. The requirements were set high for the TAs, but in reality, many of them did not even, not many, but some of them did not even complete their high school diploma. So they were clearly unqualified. They received only a 2-day preparation course, an online one, which basically dealt with classroom management issues and and they were supposed to teach all the school subjects, the science and the math and the Hebrew, everything that you study in elementary schools. And there was a lot of public criticism from them, a lot of criticism from the public and the media because of that. And so our purpose was to try and examine the integration of these TAs in schools. Now, this is a lot. I'm focusing here only on 4 research questions, but we had more research questions, which we can't go into them right now because of time constraints. And we asked which roles were the TAs assigned in schools? What was their level of preparation to perform these roles? Did they receive any professional development and support during the year? And how satisfied were the TAs? And how satisfied were the schools from the work of the TAs? So we had 2 lengthy anonymous self-report questionnaires, which we sent online a few months ago towards the end of the school year, which ends usually at the end of June. So we sent it in May to about 1,000 teaching assistants countrywide. We received the emails from the Ministry of Education, or at least some of them. And because we didn't have all 6,000 emails, and we sent it to principals in primary schools. It was a snowball sampling, so we don't really know how many got it, but we received responses from 252 TAs and 136 school principals. So the participants, the TAs, they were working in state schools throughout the countries, teaching 1st to 6th grade, mostly females, as we usually have. Ages varied. The education level, about half of them had only a high school diploma, not even a full one. Some had a partial high school diploma. Only half had an academic degree, and not in the areas that they taught in schools. Almost all of them had previous experience with teaching and guiding, mostly informal education, but they did not have any formal qualifications as teachers, and hence we consider them as out-of-field teachers. The school principals, the 136, some of them were principals and some were vice principals. Not much to say about them. Again, from different places in Israel, around the country. And the research instrument, I'm focusing here only on the items that I'll be showing in a few minutes in the results, and because it was a very, as I said, a very lengthy questionnaires. So we asked about tasks and assignments. Most of the items are taken from Talis. We asked them about the preparedness to fulfill their tasks. Again, items were taken from Talis. We asked about the degree of support and professional development. We're focusing here only on some of the items, not all of them, and about the degree of satisfaction, both of the TAs and of the schools. So if you look at the results, these are the tasks that were assigned according to the TAs assigned to them. According to the TAs, the main assignment was to teach a group of children by themselves to a very large extent. That's the blue. They also dealt with classroom management, worked with individual pupils, and so planned lessons and counseled students. So they did quite a lot of things according to the TAs. If I'm looking at the same questions were presented to the school principals. Now they think that the TAs did much less, and you can see the blues are smaller, but they do still think that the TAs taught a group of children, not by myself, but they taught a group of children on their own. And they also worked with individual pupils. These are the highest, 74% and 85%. But the rest of the things they did much less if we compare it to the TAs. And here is the comparison of the TAs and the principals. Teaching a group of children and working with individual pupils was the highest according to both groups. So what I wanted to show here is that the point here is that they were teachers, full teachers working with full classes. Looking at their level of preparedness, when we asked the TAs, we can see that according to the TAs, between 20% and almost 40% felt that they were highly prepared to do the tasks that they were supposed to. The highest ones were teaching in a multicultural or multilingual setting and using ICT for teaching. And the rest were much less. So they felt not so qualified not so prepared to conduct all their tasks. If we look at the same, I won't go into it, but we've got here some quotes from an open question, but I'll skip it because I'm not sure I'll have the time. So this is what the school principals said about the exact same things. According to the school principals, these people are not qualified for anything, and they're certainly not prepared. But notice that the two highest ones are teaching in a multicultural and multilingual setting and using ICT. So these were the highest, but it's a huge difference. And notice that the grade, the low and very low, is immense here. And this is the comparison between the two, the TAs and the principals. Again, we can see that there are significant differences in all of them. We asked them about support and professional development, which was provided to the TAs, so that you can see that both groups agree that that the TAs took part in professional development activities, discussing work-related issues. TAs a bit more than the principals, and so is the teamwork and dialogue with colleagues that was ranked a bit higher by the TAs. What about the satisfaction, which is our last finding here? So the TAs were very satisfied, highly satisfied from their work as TAs, 84%, which is huge. What about the school principals? How satisfied were they from the work of the TAs? Also very satisfied. 88% said that they were extremely satisfied with their work. And they also said, we had lots of questions. Again, I chose here only two. Employing TAs is a good solution for teacher shortage. Almost 84% agreed with this statement. So I'm concluding, and the TAs were hired during COVID-19, and unlike when we say a TA, usually TAs are only there to help the teachers. Here, the TAs were functioning as full-fledged teachers. They taught full classes and they conducted a lot of things by themselves, which makes a lot of sense. Classes were split into two, but they had no proper qualifications, and therefore we consider them as out-of-field teachers in this case. And the TAs, and even more so, the school principals, ranked their level of preparedness as not satisfactory enough. And that's to say the least, because the school principals didn't think they were qualified at all to conduct any of the things. But they did agree that they received professional development support, but this cannot probably, or it makes a lot of sense that this cannot, even though you receive professional support during the year, this cannot replace proper teaching, teacher education and training. And so we also see that the TAs were satisfied with their work, and this makes a lot of sense. And by the way, I didn't mention it, but many of them were people who lost their jobs during COVID-19. So they were looking for jobs, and so they were happy to get a stable job and a well-paid job. And by the way, TAs received more money than regular teachers, and that's important to say, which is really very funny. And some of the school principals in the questionnaire commented about it, and they said it doesn't make sense that we recruited these people, but they receive more money than regular teachers per hour. But it is really surprising that the school principals were so satisfied with the TAs. And even it is more surprising to think that they think that this is a good solution for teacher shortage. Now, at this point of time, many of the TAs, I mean, we have just begun in September 1st, another new year. And many of the TAs continued working in schools. COVID is still here. Lockdowns are still, being discussed. Yes, lockdown or no lockdown. Right now, we don't have a lockdown, but the TAs are still there, and we're still supposed to work in smaller groups. About 300 out of the 6,000 began studying in a special program that the MO opened, trying to prepare them to become teachers, but only 300 out of the 6,000. And I'm leaving us with a set of questions that we're still thinking about. Was the TA initiative a good solution? We wanted to maximize the return to school, but this seems to be at the expense of the quality of our teaching force. But keeping the kids at home without allowing them to come into school, would that be a better solution? What would be the long-term consequences of hiring these TAs? Will more of them perhaps join the teacher education programs in the future and stay in education, or not? Or perhaps they would continue on working in schools without any diploma, because COVID is still here and doesn't seem to go away in the near future. And how come the school principals were so satisfied to the point that they would consider the TAs as a replacement for teachers? And could it be that it is because they're so desperate as a result of this continuous teacher shortage that we have in Israel all the time? So all of a sudden, they had some help in schools, not teachers, teaching assistants, but perhaps for them, this is better than nothing. So I'm leaving us with these questions, which we're still thinking about.